Welcome back to continuing the discussion, Genesis chapter 40. Well, we're going to unpack the deeper historical and theological tensions here. The first one, the politics of prison. Was Joseph's rise realistic? Okay. One of the striking features in Genesis 40 is how Joseph, a foreign prisoner, is placed in charge of royal officials. From a historical perspective, this raises eyebrows. Egyptian prisons, especially those connected to the house of the captain of the guard, were tightly controlled. Foreigners, especially slaves accused of assaulting an Egyptian official's wife, would likely be confined, not promoted. So how do we reconcile this? Some scholars propose that this narrative reflects more of a literary motif than a factual prison system. The motif of righteous sufferer elevated through favor is widespread in Near Eastern literature. We see echoes of this in the instruction of Amenhotep and in the Mesopotamian tale of Ahakar. Joseph's story follows a similar structure: a fall, a waiting period, and an eventual exaltation. The point, then, may not be realism. It may be to teach something about resilience in unjust systems. Divine silence in human forgetfulness. It's the theology of absence. In Genesis 40, God never speaks. There are no visions, no angels, no direct interventions. Instead, we have human dreams and human interpretations. This is a major shift from earlier Genesis chapters. Abraham speaks directly with God. Jacob wrestles with an angel, but Joseph, he's navigating institutions, silence, and the hopes of other people. Theologically, this may reflect an evolving view of divine presence. Some scholars argue that this part of Genesis shows a God who acts subtly through dreams, memory, timing, not through overt miracles. That shift mirrors what later exilic and post-exilic Jews would experience: a theology of hiddenness. Joseph's plea, "Remember me," echoes this theme. The divine feels distant. Human beings must carry the weight of interpretation, justice, and mercy. And now for the role of dreams in this contextual development. Dreams drive the Joseph narrative, but unlike Daniel, who explicitly gives credit to God for a dream interpretation, Joseph's statement, "Don't interpretations belong to God," is ambiguous. Is he declaring divine authority or humbling himself before prisoners? Scholars like John J. Collins suggest this could be post-exilic editing, inserting monotheistic clarity into older folk tales where dreams were a cultural norm. In fact, a 3-day timeline in both dreams mirrors Egyptian and Mesopotamian symbolic numerology. 3 was often seen as a time of transition. The fact that both dreams are fulfilled exactly on schedule suggests a tightly edited story, constructed for symmetry and literary elegance, not necessarily historical recounting. Now for some intertextual echoes, like forgotten men and future kings. Joseph being forgotten echoes other biblical themes. Noah is remembered by God in Genesis 8 after a long silence. Hannah prays not to be forgotten in 1 Samuel 1. The thief on the cross asked Jesus to remember me in Luke 23. These echoes suggest that forgotten isn't just about memory, it's about agency. Who has the power to name, recall, and elevate? In Genesis 40, it's not Pharaoh or God who moves the story. It's a cupbearer's memory, flawed and delayed. In a text where divine speech is absent, human loyalty becomes theological currency. And now for some scholarly divergence here. Is Joseph an Israelite or an Egyptianized hero? Some critical scholars have argued that Joseph's story shows acculturation into Egyptian norms. He shaves, he adopts Egyptian names, he functions in the bureaucratic court. In fact, some have proposed that Joseph was originally a wisdom figure akin to Akar, or even the Egyptian vizier Imhotep. whose story was later retrofitted into the Israelite genealogies. This would mean that Joseph's identity as a Hebrew in Genesis 40:15 is a retroactive insertion, tying him to the patriarchal lineage. From this view, the Joseph cycle serves to both preserve an ancient Egyptian tale and reframe it as part of Israel's conventional narrative. This doesn't invalidate the story. It opens it up to new meaning. It suggests that Scripture is a living archive, a layered text where history and theology evolve together. Final thought, Genesis 40 invites us to study silence, systems, and slow memory. Through a historical critical lens, the story isn't just about Joseph. It's about power, identity, and how people navigate unjust worlds without divine instruction. And perhaps that's what makes it enduring. It speaks to those who wait, interpret, and keep showing up, even when no one remembers their name. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and stay tuned for tomorrow's chapter 41. If you have any comments or anything that came to you as we read through this, please pop it in the comments. I would love to hear it. I'd love to investigate it further, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. Again, I'm still messing with formats, so I'm still trying to come up with a good mixture of theology and critical analysis, so that way I can, because this Bible study is mainly for me to be able to continue my work in the historical Jesus and the historical nature of this wonderful biblical text that we all rely so much for our moral compasses and the way in which to live in our lives. So thank you so much for following and for being a part of this journey. Be good, and I will see you tomorrow.